Welcome to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the most pivotal moments of our collective past. Today, we embark on an epic journey to explore one of the most complex and decisive naval battles in history, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. This clash of titans, fought during World War II, would change the course of the war in the Pacific and leave an indelible mark on the annals of military history. The year is 1944, and the Allies are pushing forward with their island-hopping campaign, seeking to strangle Japan's supply lines and pave the way for a potential invasion of the Japanese mainland. In the months leading up to the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the Allies had been making steady gains in the Pacific. The capture of Saipan, Guam, and Tinian in the Mariana Islands had provided a crucial foothold for further advances, while the liberation of New Guinea and the Solomon Islands had secured vital air bases and staging areas for future operations. Meanwhile, the Japanese military was facing an existential crisis. Their once mighty fleet, which had wreaked havoc on Pearl Harbor just 3 years prior, was now struggling to stay afloat. The loss of experienced pilots, the depletion of fuel reserves, and the relentless bombing of their shipyards had all taken a devastating toll on Japan's naval capabilities. Despite these challenges, Admiral Soimu Toyoda, the commander-in-chief of Japan's combined fleet, remained determined to defend his country's interests in the Philippines. He knew that if the Allies were able to establish a foothold on Leyte Island, they would be able to sever Japan's supply lines and cut off its access to the rich oil fields of Borneo and Sumatra. As the Allies began to assemble their invasion force, codenamed King II, the Japanese launched a series of desperate countermeasures. Admiral Toyoda activated Operation Shogo, a daring plan to lure the American fleet into a trap, using a decoy force to draw away the U.S. Third Fleet, while a more powerful Japanese force, centered around the battleships Yamato and Musashi, would sneak up on the Allied invasion fleet and annihilate it. The fate of Leyte Gulf, and indeed the entire Pacific theater, hung precariously in the balance. In the weeks preceding the battle, Admiral William Halsey Jr., commander of the U.S. Third Fleet, had been growing increasingly concerned about the Japanese naval presence in the Philippines. Intelligence reports suggested that a large Japanese fleet was gathering in the vicinity of Brunei Bay on the island of Borneo, and Halsey knew that he had to act swiftly to prevent this force from interfering with the Allied invasion. Halsey's plan was to use his fast carrier task forces to attack the Japanese naval base at Okinawa, drawing out the enemy fleet and destroying it in a decisive battle. Meanwhile, Admiral Thomas Kinkaid, commander of the U.S. 7th Fleet, would lead the Allied invasion force into Leyte Gulf, supported by a formidable array of warships, troop transports, and amphibious landing craft. As the Allies began their final preparations for the invasion, the Japanese were putting the finishing touches on their own plan. Admiral Toyoda had divided his fleet into 3 main components: the Northern Force, under Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, which would serve as the decoy; the Central Force, under Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, which would deliver the main blow against the Allied invasion fleet; and the Southern Force, under Vice Admirals Shoji Nishimura and Kiyo Hideshima, which would provide supporting firepower and act as a reserve. As the Allies launched their invasion of Leyte Island on October 20, 1944, the Japanese Northern Force, led by Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, set sail from Japan, heading towards the Philippine Sea. This decoy force, consisting of 4 carriers, 2 battleships, and numerous smaller ships, was tasked with luring the U.S. Third Fleet away from Leyte Gulf, creating an opportunity for the Central and Southern forces to attack the Allied invasion fleet. Meanwhile, Admiral Thomas Kinkaid's 7th Fleet had begun landing troops on the eastern coast of Leyte Island, near the town of Palo, at 10:00 a.m. on October 20th. The initial assault was supported by a formidable array of warships, including 6 battleships, 4 cruisers, and numerous destroyers. As the day wore on, the Allies established a solid foothold on the island, despite encountering fierce resistance from Japanese forces. On the morning of October 23rd, Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet intercepted a Japanese radio transmission indicating that Ozawa's Northern Force was approaching. Believing this to be the main Japanese fleet, Halsey set sail in pursuit, leaving the San Bernardino Strait unguarded. This decision would prove fateful, as it allowed Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's central force to pass through the strait undetected and head towards Leyte Gulf. As Kurita's force approached the strait, it was detected by American submarines, which promptly launched a torpedo attack on the Japanese ships. The battleship Atago was sunk, while the Takao suffered significant damage. Despite these losses, Kurita continued to push forward, determined to fulfill his mission. On the evening of October 24th, the Central Force emerged from the San Bernardino Strait and entered Leyte Gulf, where it encountered a small force of American escort carriers, destroyers, and destroyer escorts known as Taffy 3. The ensuing battle off Samar was one of the most intense and chaotic naval engagements in history. Outgunned and outnumbered, the Americans nonetheless put up a fierce resistance, using their speed and agility to evade the Japanese battleships. As the battle raged on, Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, commander of Taffy 3, ordered his ships to launch a counterattack against the Japanese fleet. The destroyer USS Johnston, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Ernest Evans, led the charge, firing torpedoes and shells at the enemy battleships. Although the Johnston was eventually sunk, its bravery and sacrifice helped to delay the Japanese advance, buying time for the rest of Taffy 3 to escape. As the sun rose on October 25th, the Central Force had still not achieved its objective of destroying the Allied invasion fleet. Kurita's ships were now scattered and disorganized, having suffered significant losses during the battle off Samari. The admiral himself was beginning to doubt the success of his mission, and he eventually ordered his force to withdraw from Leyte Gulf. The Southern Force, led by Vice Admirals Shoji Nishimura and Kyo Hideshima, had also failed to achieve its objectives. After passing through the Surigao Strait on the night of October 24-25, the Japanese ships were ambushed by an American force consisting of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The resulting Battle of Surigao Strait was a disaster for the Japanese, with 2 battleships, the Yamashiro and Fuso, sunk, along with several smaller ships. As the day wore on, the Battle of Leyte Gulf continued to unfold, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Japanese had failed to destroy the Allied invasion fleet, but they had nonetheless inflicted significant damage on the American naval forces. The Allies, however, had secured a vital foothold on Leyte Island, paving the way for the eventual liberation of the Philippines from Japanese occupation. In the words of Admiral Halsey, the battle was a confused and confusing affair, with ships and planes milling about in every direction. As the dust settled on October 25th, it became clear that the Battle of Leyte Gulf had been a decisive victory for the Allies, but one that had come at great cost. The Japanese Navy had suffered irreparable losses, and its ability to challenge Allied naval power had been severely diminished. As the dust settled on October 25th, the Battle of Leyte Gulf drew to a close, marking a decisive victory for the Allies and a crushing defeat for the Japanese Navy. The Japanese had suffered irreparable losses, with 4 aircraft carriers, 3 battleships, 10 cruisers, 9 destroyers, and numerous smaller ships sunk or severely damaged. The Allies, while also suffering significant losses, had secured a vital foothold on Leyte Island, paving the way for the eventual liberation of the Philippines from Japanese occupation. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Halsey's decision to pursue Ozawa's northern force was subject to intense scrutiny and criticism. Many argued that his actions had left the San Bernardino Strait unguarded, allowing Kurita's Central Force to pass through undetected and launch a surprise attack on the American escort carriers. However, as historian Samuel Eliot Morrison noted, the pursuit of Ozawa's force was a necessary gamble, for it prevented the Japanese from launching a concerted attack on the Leyte invasion fleet. As the Allies continued to push forward, they faced fierce resistance from Japanese forces on land and in the air. The Battle of Leyte Gulf had been a significant turning point in the war, but it was by no means the end of the conflict. The Philippines would not be fully liberated until June 1945, with the capture of Manila and the defeat of the last major Japanese stronghold. Today, the Battle of Leyte Gulf is remembered as one of the largest and most complex naval battles in history, involving over 280 ships and 200,000 sailors. It marked a significant shift in the balance of power in the Pacific as the Allies gained control of the seas and began to push the Japanese back towards their homeland. As Admiral Chester Nimitz reflected, the Battle of Leyte Gulf was a great victory, but it was also a sobering reminder of the sacrifices that must be made in war. The legacy of the Battle of Leyte Gulf can still be seen today, with many historians regarding it as a turning point in the Pacific War. The battle marked the beginning of the end of the Japanese Navy's ability to challenge Allied naval power and paved the way for the eventual invasion of Japan. In the words of historian John Keegan, the study of war is not just about battles won or lost, but about the human experience and the complexities of conflict. The Battle of Leyte Gulf will always be remembered as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the sailors and soldiers who fought in it, and as a reminder of the enduring importance of naval power in shaping the course of history. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that, to understand the present, we must first understand the past.